Hello again, hockey fans. Are you ready to brave the wild? It is episode number 31. I am your host, Joey Awajan, or Paladino Joey. Episode number 31 of Brave the Wild. Today is Friday, December the 18th, 2009. It is great to have you with me once again today. Brave the Wild is available on thesportstuff.com and on iTunes. There's also a link to Brave the Wild on Minnesota.nhlfansite.com. We appreciate that as well. So those are our affiliates. Of course, thesportstuff.com, the flagship host of the site, of the show. And today's show, well, there's some nuggets to cover. There's some stuff to talk about today. And of course, the Wild playing really, really good hockey. To be honest, there's quite a bit to talk about, and most of it's encouraging. Most of it. Unfortunately, the first of the three games I'm going to review is just a wall the Wild can't seem to get through, or a ceiling they can't seem to break. Got to break that ceiling until they can really start moving and becoming a playoff team. And well, we're going to get to that pretty quick. Of course, that game was in Vancouver. So that's going to be the idea today. We're going to talk about three games. We are also going to talk about the very improved play of Martin Havlet, who has really, really stepped up a bit of late. Really stepped up here in the month of December. I'm very, very happy, and I got to think that attributes to the Wild's play of late. It really does. We're going to definitely get into that a little more in depth. We are also going to talk about something I wanted the Wild to do about 2 episodes ago. I talked about it. Talked about, how there's a guy named Clayton Stoner in the minor leagues. He's been there for a while, and I thought the Wild should call him up. Maybe he'd be more of a long-term fit than, say, somebody like a Jamie Cyphers, who's been he's a gutty guy, but that's all he is. Maybe Clayton Stoner can offer a little bit more. Well, funny how that works. Clayton Stoner was called up. Jamie Cyphers sent down. Now, it's nothing against Jamie Cyphers. He might be back, and if he is, good for him. So, yeah, I mean, it's just it's almost like they listen to the show. It almost is. No, somebody does. Some of you out there do, and I appreciate you guys very much. Please tell a friend about Brave the Wild. It'd really be appreciated. So those are 2 things I'm going to get to. Also, Andrew Ebbet. Yep, Andrew Ebbet has joined Concussion Junction. It is a revolving door at Concussion Junction. I mean, there are too many people joining that. So we're going to get into those topics today. That's about 4 topics. You got the game reviews, you got Martin Havlet, Andrew Ebbet, Clayton Stoner. So a lot to get to, so we're going to get to it right now. There will be no break, as you probably figured out by now. So what did I talk about on the last show? What did I talk about? The Wild, it's just like a stock that there's a glass ceiling, and every time the stock reaches the glass ceiling, it seems to bounce off it and go back down again. Well, luckily the Wild did not go back down, but the problem is they did bounce off of it. They just couldn't break the Vancouver Canucks. The Vancouver Canucks were 1 point ahead of the Minnesota Wild. 1 point. And how many points are the Vancouver Canucks ahead of the Wild today? 1 point. And exactly like I said, the Wild would until they can get over those Vancouver Canucks. And a game like that, not only would literally put them over, mathematically and all that good stuff, but mentally, it would put them over the Vancouver Canucks. They would finally get over that wall, at least for one day. They'd finally get that mental block out of the way. I mean, this Vancouver Canucks team has a mental block on the Minnesota Wild. And if you don't believe that, you're not paying attention. You're not paying attention. But like as I was saying, the Wild would be stuck in that 11-13 range, which record-wise, it's not bad. It's not bad at all. I mean, what's the worst record in the Western Conference today? 13-14. 13-14 is the worst record in the Western Conference. Only one team has a losing record, and they are 1 game below 500. You talk about competition, folks. But that's the thing. That's why you got to win games against teams like Vancouver. You have to, because they keep winning. They're not losing. They're going to win. They always have a winning record, nonstop. They're 19-15, yet they're the 10th seed. Well, they're the 11th. So if we want to get over this 11-13 range and move on, you got to beat teams like the Vancouver Canucks, especially them, because they're that damn mental block. And the Wild are stuck in that 4th place, unfortunately. It was frustrating. And the Wild pretty much were losing the whole game, too. That's what drove me even more crazy. It's like, why? Vancouver is a nice all-around team, but it's just so frustrating. Down 2-0 really early. Just 6 minutes into the game was already 2-0 Vancouver, and it's like, that's why I'm telling you it's a mental block. But this was right about when Martin Havlet started to wake up. Not quite. He started to wake up a few games earlier in December. As you heard on the previous show, he was starting to wake up. Now he's really awoken, as he scored in every single game. He has a point in the last 4 games, as they were saying last night. And, of course, that's a fact. But, yeah, Daniel Sundin and Mason Raymond put the Canucks up 2-0 right away. The shots on goal were very even. It's just the execution was quite different. And the Wild, which is something they've been doing quite a lot lately. And, they're coming to get to the key as to why the Wild lost here really quick. The Wild have been out shooting teams and destroying them in the face-offs of late. The Wild 49-20 in the face-off category, yet we can't win in Vancouver. We lose 4-3. We outshoot them 41-29. Yet we lose in Vancouver. Yeah, we lose. That's because the Vancouver Canucks had 3 power plays out of 5. So that Wild penalty kill, well, it didn't show up. It didn't show up at all, and especially early on. And not to mention the dumb penalties the Wild were getting in this game. Dumb penalties. I mean, there were 5. That's not like the worst ever, but the timing obviously didn't work out very good. And wow, what a tough go. I mean, remember, Martin Havlet had a 3-point game here, and that's when you knew he's really woken up here, big time. It's like, whoa, Martin Havlet's alive. He's awake. He's living and breathing. It's Martin Havlet. It's not this other guy who looks like him who can't play very good. Who's got no energy and is virtually invisible and even was hurt for a while. The funny part is, too, the other guys that scored for the Wild, Shane Knighty and Greg Zanin. So that's another thing that's slightly frustrating. The big guns couldn't get it done. Not that they're really big guns, but big guns compared to Knighty and Zanin. So just a frustrating game for the Wild, and it just showed that, hey, we're not getting over the ceiling tonight. We're still stuck in this dang lower fourth of the Western Conference, which means no playoffs. So, and of course, Roberto Luongo had to do with it as well, saving 38 shots out of 41. Roberto Luongo, big saves down the stretch as the Wild outshot Vancouver 18-8 in the second period, and didn't score. Roberto Luongo right there, folks, all the way. Vancouver's defense has gotten a lot better over the years, but on this particular night, the Wild offense was absolutely awake, but they didn't score a goal when they needed to. They're trying to get things going, and they just couldn't get it done. Havlet brought the Wild within 1 with about a minute left, but that was when he got his 4th goal to go along with his 2 assists on the Knighty and Zanin goals, along with Broziak, who also had 2 assists. It just wasn't the night for the Wild. It just was not meant to be, unfortunately. But like I said, the good news is Martin Havlet is back. And when you have a team that was already playing pretty good, thanks to the newcomers at the time, and then guys like Brunette and Koivu took over, now you get guys like a guy like Martin Havlet finally stepping into his role and to provide some offense. The guy's more of a passer than Gaborik was a scorer. So, if that makes sense, Gaborik is more of a scorer, and Havlet scores, but he's got more of a passing game than than dominating in the goal category. But the goals are there usually. He's never gotten 30 goals or over 30 goals. He's usually right about 30 at his top. Otherwise, he's a 25 goal, 40 assist guy. He's about that kind of player. 45 assists, 70-point guy. So we'll see if things can average out at some point. I mean, if Havlet can get hot enough, then maybe that will happen. But I'm going to get more deeper into Havlet in a minute here. More deeper. Excuse my horrible English there. My bad English. I'm butchering the English language. I may butcher the English language, but you do know where I stand. Okay, sorry. I had to do that. Wild come home. 1 home game. Just 1. I mean, it's been a road fest, folks. They had 5 games in a row. Nashville, Phoenix, Colorado, Calgary, Vancouver. Finally come home for Columbus, and then have to go to Montreal and Ottawa. After that, they go back up to Canada. The Wild, well, this game was almost exactly like the Calgary Flames game, as the Wild dominate the game, they dominate in the shots and all that stuff and puck possession. They got a lot of good shots. I mean, they didn't actually dominate in shots necessarily, I guess. Early on they did, and things really tightened up after that. They got 11 shots on goal in the first period, only 6 and 6 in the second and third. But at least it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, I guess. It was the ugly but good enough is pretty much what matters. Rick Nash always scores on the Wild, no matter what. Him and Marian Gaborik always had issues in the past. 17th goal of the year for him, and then Guillaume Latendresse is back scoring again with his 5th goal, and Zidlicky adding his 3rd. You're going to notice a line, though, that's been pretty cool of late. It's either one that involves, it's got Koivu and Havlet, and either Latendresse or Andrew Brunette. And especially the Brunette one, when those 3 are together, what a great line. That has been beautiful, and that's very encouraging when you see that. But Latendresse works really good with Koivu and Havlet as well. Those lines have been, you've been seeing some chemistry going on. Koivu's play of late has been as good as ever. He's just been outstanding. And unfortunately, right around about a game or two ago, was officially when Andrew Ebbet got his concussion. I believe that was the game before, excuse me. But that's the unfortunate part. The good news is, though, how the Wild were able to get it done here. I mean, it wasn't a great game, really, overall. It really wasn't. It was that first period that it looked like the Calgary game, and then it really closed up after that. Only 1 power play apiece in this game. Wild win the face-off category yet again, 22-18. There weren't even that many face-offs in this game. It went by pretty damn quick. Like I said, only 1 power play apiece, so not much stoppage of play in this game. It just zipped on by. But it was nice to see Latendresse tie this sucker up. I mean, the Wild cannot afford to lose to the Columbus Blue Jackets at home. You can't do it. You can't do it if you're going to get taken seriously. And yes, Columbus has been an improving team the last couple of years. Has been, but now, well, they're the 12th seed, so that's another reason why the Wild have moved up a little bit. Because of winning games like that. You got to win games against these conference or division rivals. And you're pretty even when it comes to record. Those games are just an absolute must if you're going to get over the hump. And that's why that Vancouver loss frustrated me so much. But at least they somewhat made up for it with the win over Columbus. Columbus had been a pretty tough team for the Wild as well last year. But the Wild looked good against them this year. So there you go. They got over one of those ghosts, I guess. As Marek Zidlicky, the hero in that 3rd period. It was just a perfectly timed play, Koivu to Zidlicky, with only 39 seconds to go. It's like, thank God we can get out of here, hopefully with a victory, provided Columbus does not score. And they tried. Oh, they tried, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter, as Backstrom did what he needs to do and stopped the last few opportunities, scoring chances that Columbus had, and the Wild escaped with a victory. It's, Second period had us a little worried. The first period was frustrating. Only 3 shots on goal by Columbus. We had 11. The puck was in their zone the whole time, and just another deal. It's like, why can't we just finish? We get all these chances but can't finish. So that's the frustrating part. Mason is a pretty good goalie over there in Columbus, but still, come on now. Come on. Puck's in your zone. The other teams, you got the puck in the other zone the whole game. Why the heck aren't you capitalizing? The Wild finally do late when it matters. So this was more of a timely offense. Kind of a rugged game, but timely offense, and that's what matters the most. Wild escape, as mentioned. So now we move on to the final game to review. And then we get into more of that other background news. This was a fun game. It wasn't great, but it was fun. Going to Montreal. It's always fun playing Montreal. And the Wild have actually had some decent success against them. As you remember us old North Star fans, the North Stars almost never had success against Montreal. Every time the Wild had to go to Montreal, it's like, here we go again. Same old crap. But in this era, for some reason, the Wild seem to beat Montreal, whether they're number 1 seed in the Western or Eastern Conference or they're one of the worst teams. This year, they're not doing so hot. Because remember, last year they collapsed late in the season. they've really been a disappointment. Benoit Pouliot is not even on that team right now. He's in their minor league. Guillaume Latendresse is here now, which is great. Guillaume, excuse me. So he's no superstar yet, but he might develop into something at least. A nice piece. Montreal, by the way, only 500 at home after losing to the Wild. They've won 3 out of their last 10 games. They've lost 6 and had a overtime loss or whatever in the as the 10th game or whatever out of the last 10. The Wild are 8-2-0 in their last 10. So you got a red-hot team and an ice-cold team going at it. No pun intended when I say ice-cold. So things look good for the Wild coming in, and they finished good. The Wild came out and just got it done. The Wild did get outshot in this game pretty significantly. 31-21, but Backstrom did the job, and Price just flat didn't for Montreal. Just more timely offense for the Wild. And Robbie Earl, straight out of Chicago. You don't really necessarily always think of Chicago as the breeding hockey players, more basketball and football, stuff like that, maybe a little baseball. But there he is, Robbie Earl. Of course, Chris Chelios is from there, but whatever. Robbie Earl getting his 3rd goal of the year. How about that? That was nice to see. And then Koivu replacing the old Koivu, and except unfortunately he's still on the Wild. The Wild execute on their 1 power play. They only had 1 power play in the whole game, and that's all that mattered. As the Wild took a 2-1 lead in the first period, and what's funny is how that was the game winner. As just Backstrom got it done after that. Montreal pretty much trying to come back into it, trying, but they were screwed. They pretty much were screwed. Havlet getting an assist there on the 1. That was the only point he got, but still it was 4 straight games with a point, which is fantastic. And then Cal Clutterbuck just kind of icing it with about 8 minutes to go. So it was just that was a pretty fun game, really, to be honest. Even though Montreal outshot us and all that stuff, and the Wild weren't really pretty, just the fact that we had the lead so early like that and just kind of hung on the rest of the way, that's all that mattered to me. Just win the game. That's all I ask. I don't care if it's ugly. I don't care if it's 8-0 and we just destroy somebody. As long as we just continue to win these games, who knows? Maybe we'll get in the playoffs, and then once you make the playoffs, anything can happen. I mean, how many 8th seeds have gone on playoff runs, especially like about 3-4 years ago, Calgary and Edmonton. They just exploded and went on runs. Maybe a rugged Wild team can do that. Fairly rugged with a little bit of offense when Martin Havlet finally wakes up, and he's been doing that. And of course, the major key is Koivu staying healthy. He's generally a healthy guy. He just had a couple of issues. Remember that freak injury of that intentional broken stick. Excuse me, what am I talking about? His leg was broken with a stick. And I can't remember the guy's name as I keep thinking about it. I can't remember it. I'm just going to have to move on because I don't have time to screw around trying to remember that. So we'll just move on here. Like I said, the Wild's play has just improved greatly, and that's what matters most right now. As Martin Havlet, folks, he had 7 points in October, right? 7 points in 12 games. It's like, that's great. Not really. Only 1 point in 7 games in November. That was when he was going through those injury issues, the hamstring and such. 10 points in 9 games so far, and of course, like I mentioned, a point in the last 4 games. He has been really good in the last 4, about 7 points in those. So started out still was fairly slow in early December, but really has picked it up here in mid-December, and I just hope this can continue. I really do. That's what matters most right now for Martin Havlet. He's got 18 points now, which isn't, it's not like end-all spectacular, but hey, you got to start somewhere, and Havlet is starting somewhere. That's the good news. Koivu's on pace for about 81 points, 80 to 81 points, which would be just fantastic if you're able to get that. Brunette has just been having a renaissance of a season. Because remember last year, how last year with the partially torn ACL, playing through that, and other just bang, he was just been banged up over and over again with the Wild last year. But what a season he's having. He's on pace for about 70 points at age 36. That's pretty awesome. And he's playing better than he really ever has with the Wild, and that's hard to believe considering how good he was in his early days of the Wild back in 02, 03, 01. It was just, it's been a wonderful time watching Andrew Brunette this season. So had to get that out of the way. Owen Nolan's hurt again, unfortunately. Had a little bit of a quieter year, but he's still one of the leaders on this team. I don't think he'll be leading the team in goals scored this year, but hey, he's only 3 points behind Koivu and Bruno, who both have 10 goals. So you never know. Maybe he'll pull that one out again. So we'll just leave it at that. But really, the next topic here, Andrew Ebbet. Yep, Andrew Ebbet, who'd been a nice little addition for the Wild. Just a nice little addition. He's only played 7 games, but he scored 3 goals, and not all in one game like Chuck Kovacic, who finally got his 7th point last night. 7th point in 23 games. He's got 4 goals this year, and remember, 3 of them were in the same game. So, yeah, not the most productive guy in the world is Chuck Kovacic. So, I like Andrew Ebbet. He's a nice little spark. He's a nice little underdog. He's kind of like a Jim Dowd, He's kind of like a Jim Dowd, Wes Walz, almost in a way. He's a little spark. He's not going to make you forget about any great player or anything, but what matters is he brings the effort. And unfortunately, he incurred a concussion on about a week ago, and that's been part of the news here. Yet, right, once again, another guy joining concussion junction. And that's just been a frustrating thing at the Wild. As now you do have 4 guys in concussion junction. 4 guys in concussion junction. So that's of course Ebbet, Peter Sikora, Pierre-Marc Bouchard, and Brent Burns. And Burns has missed 10 games already, by the way. And remember how Burns the scariest one of them all, because the fact that he had one mid to late last year, and of course they sort of hit it most of the year. He kind of hit it, and so did the players. I don't know what the deal was with that. The coaches, I don't know what was going on with that. There was some confusion and not much communication there. But this whole concussion junction thing is getting kind of frustrating. I know I kind of, in a way, turned it into a gag on the show, but I don't necessarily mean to do it to laugh at anybody. It's more of like frustration thing. Like, it's unbelievable. It's amazing how well the Wild have played with all these key players out. Pierre-Marc Bouchard, he was a 50, 60-point guy. Brent Burns, he's a 40-point defenseman. Peter Sikora, he's like a 40, 50-point guy, even 60 sometimes. These are key players, so very frustrating. Yes, Ebbet was injured last week in Phoenix in that stupid Phoenix game. That was terrible. So, Ebbet really did give the Wild a boost since coming from Chicago. But, 3 goals in 7 games. Wild also reassigned center Nathan Smith to their AHL affiliate in Houston on Monday. So, Nathan Smith going back to Houston, he's kind of been an up and downer. So now, as I get through a little bit of Wild news here, I'm going to be bouncing up and down a little bit. That's just how it goes. So, Andrew Ebbet, we hope this guy's going to come back, but unfortunately, he's on injured reserve, which that's not always good. It could be a while. Really not sure with these concussions. You just don't know. You only hope for the best. So, good luck to Andrew Ebbet. And, of course, Pierre-Marc Bouchard has missed every game except the season opener. Yeah, that really sucks. So here we go into the Wild. Now, yesterday, apparently, Andrew Ebbet is practicing already, believe it or not. But the truth is, though, you don't really know when he's actually going to come back. There's no real say. If Nolan and Ebbet are traveling, it's really hard to say. Ebbet might be traveling from what they've been saying, but Nolan won't be. So that's pretty much still been going on. So we'll see what happens with Andrew Ebbet. It sounds like things are getting better with him, actually, believe it or not. It's now that I'm seeing what's really going on here. He is getting better, so that's the good news. He's starting to get better here. It's just it's just scary when this kind of thing happens. It's just too many guys at once. But here we go on to Clayton Stoner. He was 2004 third round pick, 79th overall by the Wild in 2004. I've been keeping an eye on him for quite a while, actually, because I like to watch the Wild affiliate, kind of keep up with some of these guys, maybe finally get something out of here. Clayton Stoner is 24 years old. And, he's a nice, tough defenseman. As I was talking about earlier, it's like, why isn't Clayton Stoner up here? Jamie Cyphers, yeah, he's a nice, gritty guy. But I got to think sooner or later, as much as Clayton Stoner has developed in the minors, I got to think sooner or later you got to at least give him a chance in the NHL, and he will finally get that chance. Finally, will get that chance. Will Clayton Stoner did not play last night in Montreal, but we'll see what happens here. It could be coming pretty quick. Maybe against Ottawa. Maybe against Ottawa tomorrow. That'll be an interesting game, by the way. I always love those East Coast games, or Eastern Conference games. I should say. It's not quite East Coast, but very happy about that. The Clayton Stoner finally a part of things. Khudobin was also sent back because Josh Harding is feeling better. He's back on board as well. Josh Harding is back with the Wild again, full time. Another bit of news here is that Wild prospect Marco Scandella made Canada's World Junior Championships roster and expected to be on the top defensive pair. So that's pretty exciting in that sense. That's a good sign at least that his development is moving up. As I can't really keep up with the juniors, that's a little bit tougher. As Tyler Kuma and Matt Hackett did not make the team. So interesting to see that Scandella would make it and Kuma wouldn't. Especially being how much Scandella that he's going to be on the top D pair, and Kuma didn't make it at all. So those are two obviously defenseman prospects. Hackett, as mentioned, did not make it. So that's another little nugget for you. It's just been an interesting little week for the Wild. Really, the main thing is some of those were just nuggets. Clayton Stoner. We don't know how successful he's going to be in the NHL. He did have 10 points in 21 games, though, for Houston Aeros. That's pretty good for a defenseman. That's pretty darn good. Did get 7 assists and 3 goals in 26 games, He was a plus 14, which by far led the team. So, again, that's very encouraging to see that for those Houston Aeros, as there are so few strong prospects in Houston. So to see a guy like that breaking through a bit, that's encouraging. Maybe the Wild have something there. Stoner is a guy I do like. He's a big, strong player. And, of course, he is 6'3", 206. He's not huge, but he's big. He's definitely above average in size. Definitely can provide another piece over there. Maybe someday, just maybe someday, he can be one of those anchor-type defensemen. And that's what I'm hoping he becomes. That's what the talk was back in 2004 when they took him in the third round. Is in the NHL, the third-round pick is pretty important. There's some of the building blocks for a team. So we'll see what happens with that. So the Wild now, as mentioned, head to Ottawa tomorrow. That is definitely a big test for the Wild. They've had a pretty good season so far. Believe it or not, they're finally back rolling again. 17-12 over there in the Eastern Conference. They're only the 7th seed, but they're just a few points behind 5th seed, or they're 1 point behind the 5th seed. Then it gets interesting when you get into the top 4 teams over there. It gets pretty high. It's very top heavy over there. It'll be an interesting game there. Their home record is 12-4-3, so much better at home than on the road, where they're only 5-8-1. It'll be a tough test for the Wild, who are still well below, or still 3 games under 500 on the road. So we'll see how things go there. Ottawa, though, has only won 4 out of their last 10. So we'll see if the run can continue. That's what counts most with these Minnesota Wild. Ottawa's defense not really up to par, and their offense certainly not what it was over the last few years. So we'll see. As the Wild finally get some home games next week. We're going to have a homestand next week. Colorado, Edmonton, St. Louis, those are all must-wins. The Wild need to keep this run going, because if they're going to have any hope of making a playoff run. Like I said about 100 billion times, and I'm going to keep saying it, you need to win games like that, especially at home. The good news is the Wild have dominated Colorado this season. They are 3-0 against Colorado. Can they do it again? I don't know. Unfortunately, the Wild have really struggled against teams like St. Louis and Los Angeles the last couple of years. And amazingly, the LA Kings are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. I don't know where that came from, and it's been a good run for them. It really has. For the last several years, they've been one of the doormats. And, of course, Edmonton, a team that's pretty much neck and neck with us in our division, and, of course, in the Western Conference. You got to win a game like that. Edmonton has always been a tough beat for the Wild, pretty much since day one. Remember, they lost 5-2 on October the 16th. That was pretty ugly stuff. So now we get some division games and some conference games here. All Western Conference the rest of the way, as with the Wild head out to California, LA area. They play LA on the 28th, Anaheim on the 29th, and then at home for LA on the 31st. That's New Year's Eve. You might imagine that might be what that is. Yeah. So that's going to be a really tough stretch there. 3 games in 4 nights, and 2 of them against the LA Kings, who of course have owned the Wild the last 3-4 years. They've kept the Wild out of the postseason. They certainly did last year anyway, is what I should say. They kept the Wild out of the postseason last year because of those crappy losses at home to the Kings. So, I kind of rambled a little long there, but hey, that's what this is about. You know, we're talking about the Minnesota Wild. I hope you'd rather me talk about the Wild and not about my lawn service or my iPod or about some other garbage going on out there in the world that might be just meaningless. I mean, there's other stuff that's important, but there's the meaningless crap too. Like, yeah, we won't even go there. Entertainment industry, that's pretty stupid. So enough of that. Enough of my rambling. I need you guys to please call into my show. It would really liven things up a bit. 209-736-7877. 209-736-7877 is the call-in line from thesportstuff.com. It is a voicemail. Treat it as such. Mention you are calling in for Brave the Wild. Leave your name and town. Do your comment, shout out, question, whatever it is. Whine, bitch about something. I don't care. Complain about how frustrating James Shepard is, and I'll agree with you. Or be happy that Havlet's playing better. Hey, whatever it is, you're welcome on board as long as it's slightly on topic. I'd appreciate it. So that's the idea there. And also on thesportstuff.com, there is a button in the upper right-hand corner of the website that says TSS Sports. Do click on that. And then there'll be a button that says register, or a link that says register on the left side of the page after that. Click on that. You're in. It is 100% free and 100% fun. On there, you join the message boards. You can talk Minnesota Wild. You can post on my little board on there in the podcast section, the Brave the Wild podcast section. So that's the idea. You get it. Please join in, become a part of things. Don't just watch sports, get involved, which is the slogan on thesportstuff.com. So enough of that. As the Wild, definitely, they've been playing good, but they've had a long way to go. And, of course, a lot of important games coming up. And I mean real important games coming up. So we will review those games. We will talk about those games in about a week. Do take care.